Cuando quieres empezar, pasar otro camino, súbete a la bestia, enfréntate con tu destino. Llena de esperanza, subes con voluntad, llegarás a tu destino, la bestia te comerá. Ponte bien abusado, la bestia no va a jugar. Si no tienes cuidado, la bestia te va a tumbar. Te va a tumbar, te va a tumbar, te va a tumbar, te va a tumbar. Tren de los desconocidos, tren de los pobres, como quiera llamarle, y ese tren toma nombres. Llega la vergüenza, pidiendo comida que arde la pobreza. Policía o asaltante, el peligro es igual, pagando soborno por tu la bestia quedar. Americano, juegan con la suerte, llegarán a su destino, llegarán a la muerte.
I wish I never told the doctors I'm a speed freak, cause I ain't made it out my bed in 3 weeks. The trizodone's delightful, however, I'm highly doubtful that anything but amphetamine could make my kite soar. Socializing, I soar, isolated AF, thanks iPhone. Lithium was meant to fix the shit, thanks psych ward. Wellbutrin and gabapentin, Lexapro, it hasn't fixed it. Doesn't matter if my therapist says he's a grad from Princeton. He thinks that it's a game like Bit Brigade, hitting these high scores. Every visit he prescribes more candy, fried corn, tip it out the bottle into my shaking palm. I kinda wanna say fuck him like he's my date to prom. I grab a bottle of Moscato just to chase it down. Big gulp, deep breath. Sometimes I hate this town. Sometimes I hate this town.
I wish I wasn't predisposed to trust issues and seeing foes and all the friendly peeps I know, but enemies we keep them close. Popo gonna squeeze the toast, keep you on that need to know. I'm so sick and tired of saying goodbye in my Easter clothes. Keep the dro, it keep me focused and blind from my troubled views. See far as the Hubble do, you got scars, well I cuff a few. Uncomfortable in own skin, lose and no win. Just clinic check depression, masturbation and adult swim. My pulse thin, and that is the inception of a pain. No, it's not my conscience, it's an aneurysm in my brain. I was skiing down the slopes, was a citizen, a king, while my parents went prescribed the nigga Ritalin again. I remember being young, yeah, I was sort of very good. Used to dream all day and night to be an ordinary boy. Used to have hope for the planet, but it's gonna get destroyed. And I hate this fucking town, and we know that it's employed. So
I wish I'd never told Marie that I would check the tweets that I'd neglected like a nest of chickadees. The slope is slippery, the trek is treacherous. To trend is to undress yourself in open history. Wishing a nigga would, like I was hoping hickory. Or praying for his peck of health. These neck beards and my messages compelled to help. It's connected to Bethlehem. With all the permanence of an etch a sketch with a shaking man. Debating them was such a waste of second wind. Fuck, I'm closing out the browser. The anger's taking off. I kinda wanna say fuck them like they my date to prom. I grab a case of the Cerveza just to chase them out. Big gulp, deep breath. Sometimes I hate this town. And so I grabbed a scrunchie, put my afro in a bun, and I sat my little butt cheeks in the bathroom with a gun, and I held it to my temple, trying hard not to remember Midjamani and my Tommy, Louie, Charlie, and my kinfolk. But I remembered them tenfold. Vomited in the bathtub, walked away with my shit soaked. I called the doctor on the follow-up to say aloud, I really love these cats, but I really hate this town. The moose, the aardvark, the pelican, the starfish, the elephant. In my kitchen when I enter, this is my night snack. This is a blade tip. This is my love tap. Exasperation, spreading thin as the gray mist in your telescope. And I am patienter than I had ever hoped. Springs from
Saludos, saludex. Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started very soon, but before we get started, we want to remind you that there are interpretation devices at the table right outside the door to your right. There are interpretation devices right outside your door to the right for English and Spanish. Si necesita interpretación, hay aparatos afuera en la mesa hacia la derecha. Solo, si necesita interpretación de español a inglés o inglés a español, hay aparatos para interpretación afuera en la mesa blanca. Gracias.
ask them since I'm going first. Buen día. Will you go ask David or Francesco to relabel these mics? Gracias. And you should maybe turn up the sound. Francesco or David is eating right now. He's wearing a blue shirt with white stripes, and he's got food in his mouth right now.
All right. Saludos. Good morning, everybody. People Summit.
Saludas. People power.
People Summit.
People power.
People Summit.
People power.
People Summit. People Summit.
People power. People power. People power.
Thank you all so much for being here. My name is Vladimir Carrasco. I'm the Deputy Director of External Affairs at CHIRLA, and I use he, him pronouns.
And my name is Elizabeth Blaney. I'm with Unión de Vecinos, the East Side chapter of the LA Tenants Union. Woo! Lots of energy today. How was yesterday? How was yesterday? We had a great day yesterday. Over 500 people came out here to the Summit of Inclusion. We had excellent panels on Let Cuba Live. We had excellent panels of youth organizing in the streets. We had panels on democracy, on what democracy really is and should be, people's democracy. We cannot forget to thank Los Jornaleros del Norte for the concert and the dancing we were doing last night. Woo! We had a great day yesterday. We're going to have another great day today. One thing that was really spectacular about yesterday is there was an ambassador from Panama who participated in that other summit over there. But she stood up, resigned her position, came here to our summit, and to Let Cuba Live. Woo! That's what we're talking about. That's the kind of change that we are having in Los Angeles and across the United States. And tomorrow we got a march. What happened with that march?
Yeah, after 97 days of waiting, after 97 days in limbo, we submitted a permit to the LAPD. And for 97 days, they kept us in limbo, never letting us know what was going on, passing the buck. But after 97 days, they gave us the permit. So this Friday, we're going to be marching all together, permit or no permit. They knew we were going, even if we didn't have a permit. So this Friday at 5 p.m., I want to see everybody in here. Bring your mom, your uncle, your cousin, your friend, your neighbor. Everybody's going to march to the summit of exclusion and tell Biden what it is, what people power looks like, what democracy looks like.
So who's going to march?
Who's marching?
If you're marching, stand up. Let me see you stand up if you're coming to that march tomorrow. Stand up. Stand up. Stand up and start marching. We're marching tomorrow, 5 p.m.
5 o'clock tomorrow. Be there.
So for today, we have a great day of conversation, dialogue, debate, getting to know each other. We want to make sure that people come to Ending Patriarchy. That is the panel right after this. We have panels on housing and empowering our neighborhoods and defending our homes. We have concerts going on tonight, again, dancing, because not only are we just working together, we're celebrating together. Because we have victories. Who's had victories in their communities? Let's hear it. When we have a victory, we shout, we scream, we clap. So we got a lot of panels going on today. We also invite you and do need more support at our art table right over here. If we're going to be marching tomorrow, we want to make sure our messages are heard, not just with our voices, but also being seen. So in your downtime, transition time, you want to just sit and talk and know people, please come over to the art table and help us make those banners for the march tomorrow. We'll be going all day long, so join us at the art table to do that. Also, while you're over there, pick up a program so you can look at all the different panels, plenaries, and other workshops that are going to be going on today.
You know, one of the good framings, good quote and a good question from author Adrienne Marie Brown that we should use as we're going into these sessions today. She asked in her writing, whose imagination are we living in? An imagination that criminalizes our people, that incarcerates our people, that militarizes our border is a white supremacist imagination. So how do we break free from that system, that imagination, with the people's radical imagination? The people's radical imagination gave us freedom in Haiti. The people's radical imagination gave us civil rights. The people's radical imagination gives us mutual aid, gives us love and compassion and solidarity for each other. So as we go into the sessions today, I want us all to think, whose imagination are we living in, and to lean in to the people's radical imagination, envision a future of abundance, a vision of a future grounded in directly impacted folks.
All right. So I want everybody to participate in this activity with me. This is something that we do in the tenants union a lot, and also from the tradition with Cesar Chavez. Put two fingers together, just these two fingers. This is what power sounds like just by yourself. But when we start getting more people, let's do two. Gets a little louder. How about 3, 4. Now let's put our whole hands together. ¿Se puede? ¿Se puede? Sí se puede, sí se puede, sí se puede, sí se puede, sí se puede. Woo! All right.
All right,
Thank
let's
you.
get started today.
Wherever you like. started in 2 minutes.
¿Alguien quiere ir primero? ¿Tú? ¿Tú quieres ir primero? No. Yo soy número 3. Yo soy número 3, me dijo.
You got it. You got it.
Yo soy number 4. I'm number 4. ¿Tú eres número 4? Sí. Sí. Podemos sentarnos, nos dijo donde queramos. Oh, okay, good.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is a beautiful spirit to start off the day with. I'm so excited to be in this space with all of you and to be sharing this moment with all of you. My name is Liane Antonio. I'm an educator and organizer with the People's Forum in New York City, and I am very, very humbled and excited to be moderating this conversation today on ending patriarchy. So we're starting the second day of this People's Summit for Democracy with a conversation with women leaders on the topic of ending patriarchy. We're having a conversation to discuss, of course, patriarchy and all of its consequences on everyone, on women, on the LGBTQ community, but really on our whole society. And we don't just want to discuss the consequences, and it is really important that we do that. It's important that we have a very clear understanding, a clear analysis of how the patriarchal system works under the capitalist society, the dominant society that we live in today. We have to have a clear understanding of the multiple ways in which patriarchy affects our lives through violence, discrimination, exclusion, and at all levels, from interpersonal to the relations that we have with the state to the very structure of our world. But we also want to talk about the reality of ending the system. The dominant system would have us believe that it's impossible to end patriarchy. It's impossible to end the sexist arrangement of society that we are in today. But we know that's not true. We know that from history, and we know that from the reality of the struggle that we all represent here in this room. That we have the agency, we have the tools, and we have the vision to end the systems that oppress and exploit and separate us. Now, so, just a few thoughts before we open up, because the Summit of Americas that Biden is leading is happening at the same time right now. In fact, I think Biden might be speaking right now. And And the summit does also take up the question of gender as one of its themes. It certainly does, and all of the institutions of the U.S. state will take up these issues. But the solutions they offer us are very limited. You know, they will make some nice comments on International Women's Day. They'll celebrate when women hold the positions in leadership that usually are occupied by men. But why would we listen to what Biden has to say and his friends when the highest judicial structure of this country is about to take us back 50 years by destroying what was fought for by struggle, by mass struggle, and overturning Roe v. Wade? Why also would we listen to the White House and its allies when there's no baby formula on the shelves? They can't even keep food for young children, newborn children, on the shelves. And we have one of the highest mortality rates of new mothers in the developed world. And on top of it, why would we listen to anything the US and its allies say when the US invades other countries, imposes sanctions and coercive measures on other countries, oftentimes in the name of liberating women from their own society? They come in with their drones, tighten the noose, and kill millions and millions of people in the name of bringing democracy and bringing possibilities to women. Why would we ever listen to what any of these people say when it comes to ending the patriarchal system? We need to listen to each other instead. We need to debate and learn. And this is the spirit of the People's Summit and why we're here today. We have the analysis and we have the tools, and we cannot allow the US elite to dictate our vision and our options for the future. So I am so honored to have the chance for us to listen to this incredible panel of women leaders from across the Americas who are all at the forefront of the struggle for a new reality, and all are fighting in different ways and different contexts, but here together representing our common vision. We will begin first with video marks from Gretel Marante Roset, who could not be with us today because she was one of the members of the Cuban delegation that was denied entry to the US and denied the opportunity to participate with us in the summit. The US definitely tried to keep us from hearing the lessons from our comrades in Cuba who resist and who defend their sovereignty and who are steadfast in the process of building socialism and unraveling the societal relations like race and patriarchy. Of course, the US doesn't want us to hear from them, but we're still going to hear from them. And no matter how many blocks they put, we're going to continue developing these relationships. This attempt only caused embarrassment for the White House. So, in that spirit, we're going to start the panel off today with the remarks from Gretel Marie Roset, and we'll play the video.
Muchas gracias por la invitación. Mi nombre es Gretel Marante Roset y hablo
Cuba since 1959, with the triumph of the revolution, set out to break down the patriarchal system and all forms of exploitation, discrimination, and violence that we inherited from capitalism, and that generate social inequality. There is a political will on the part of the government to undermine gender gaps. Today, the youth are incorporating a left-wing feminist agenda into their programs of struggle. Many are sympathetic and supportive of the revolutionary process and defend the Cuban social project. Liane Antonio, the eternal president of the Federation of Cuban Women, recognized the important work of feminist movements, who assume an anti-capitalist stance, aware that in order to achieve ultimate liberation, the gender struggle cannot be separated from the class struggle. It is not possible to build new paradigms on top of predatory structures and consider capital as the most important thing and not human beings. Social and grassroots organizations are one of the main resources that people have at their disposal to build just and equitable societies. Thinking of socialism as a viable option to deconstruct sexist, discriminatory, anti-patriarchal stereotypes, to eliminate violence and gender gaps, and to move toward full equality, and thus achieve definitive liberation, where all persons enjoy the same rights and opportunities without distinction. In Cuba, since the triumph of the revolution, the state and government have facilitated respect for human rights for all people, without discrimination on the basis of sex, gender, sexual orientation, or religious belief. We women are active subjects of rights. We have not only been beneficiaries, but also protagonists in the development of our society. In my country, there is a principle of equal pay for equal work, of equal value to men. This is a longing for many women in the world who, even if they perform the same professions as men, are not equally remunerated. The high participation figures of Cuban women in economic and political life, social and cultural development of the country demonstrate how much progress has been made in the area of gender equality. Beyond statistics, what has been achieved is materialized in the life stories of each Cuban family. The Secretary General of the United Nations urged the increased prevention of different manifestations of domestic violence, providing that under the conditions of confinement and quarantine imposed by COVID-19, this phenomenon may increase. In Cuba, there is a zero-tolerance policy to any gender-based violence in all its forms. During the pandemic, the National Program for the Advancement of Women was approved. through a presidential decree that constitutes the gender agenda of the Cuban state, with 7 areas of special attention that transversalize the elimination of gender-based violence as a major expression of intersectional discrimination and dedicates a specific area to legislation and law, to a normative framework and system of protection against all forms of discrimination and violence. We also highlight in the same way approval of a comprehensive strategy for the prevention and attention to violence, and within a family context, also approved by the agreement of the Council of Ministers, to guarantee a comprehensive and integrated response for effective prevention and care around gender-based violence, implementing the commitments undertaken by Cuba, such as the Convention for the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women and the Convention on the Rights of the Child. In a space like this, we cannot fail to make reference to the worst form of violence to which the people and families in Cuba are subjected. We refer to the unjust and genocidal blockade imposed by the U.S. government against the island more than 60 years ago, which constitutes an obstacle to the implementation of the country's National Economic and Social Development Plan and of the 2030 Agenda and its Sustainable Development Goals. 78% of women and girls in Cuba were born under the effects of this blockade. For that reason, it is the blockade which is the greatest form of violence suffered by the Cuban people, and in particularly by women. And it's the main obstacle to the development of our life projects. Even though when Cuban women exhibit important indications of political participation, economic and social participation as well, the blockade prevents their progress and continuous empowerment of Cuban women in society, and therefore the achievement of our sustainable development goals, particularly our goal number 5, in which references gender equality. The measures of the blockade limit the optimal development of equality because they hinder the enjoyment of the full rights of Cuban women, and they do so by making their needs, differentiated from demands, invisible. It would be interesting to think about what life would be like for Cuban men and women without the existence of the blockade. In these years of unilateral sanctions, the country has not ceased its efforts to undertake actions in favor of equality, gender equality, and the incorporation of inclusive perspectives in the new social scenarios. In addition to hostility and constant aggression, the most recent culmination of which is the absence of Cuba at the so-called Summit of the Americas, let us build bridges of love that make even the impossible possible. Let us demand the elimination of the blockade and the cessation of obstacles that prevent connections between Cubans living in the U.S. and their families in Cuba. We trust you. We trust the strength of our unity and your siblinghood with our revolution and our people, convinced that solidarity cannot be blockaded in any way. Thank you so much.
Because I was, cuando lo prendí me dio estática en el
Gretel Rosette is the International Relations Officer of the Federation of Cuban Women, and she's participated in several, too many to name, international sessions of the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean. And we thank her for participating with us and hope to be with her again soon when we are able. I am going to introduce now Ophelia Fernandez. Ophelia is a feminist and a political activist with the Frente Patria Grande. She is the youngest member of the Buenos Aires City Legislature and the youngest lawmaker in Latin America. She was elected to her position in 2019 at only 19 years of age and has inspired young women all over the continent. So welcome, Ophelia.
Bueno, gracias. Voy a hablar en español. Hablar lento para hacerle
I'm going to speak in Spanish, so I'm going to try to be slow for those that are interpreting. Between Argentinians, we don't know how to do it. But I don't know how. But let's think about it. At this moment, our peoples are struggling through grave problems with a great inequality, unemployment, access to housing, high violence, gender violence. In my generations, it's a very particular problem. It's not an individual problem. The depression and anxiety that are collective, and so asking how are we going to create a life, how we're gonna live, and for what and where. So it creates a very big problem, and that problem in a lot of times is turning into and that politician a lot of the times it's for groups by the rights that are especially conservative and they're racist and violent. But I think that we have to pay attention, because that doesn't mean that it automatically we can transport those principles to the rest of the society. But there's a great frustration, and the politicians are not doing things to remedy this. So we have to pay a lot of attention to this social problems to understand it better and faster. So we have a great challenge in front of us to take away the problem and to reclaim politics. And what I've been seeing and thinking is that a very important part in this moment, reactionary moments, is not. Sorry, interpreter didn't understand. To not be able to commit to start our own debates. I am convinced that the struggles for the access today, they have to be committed to conquer and conquest the rights from the future. I think that the best thing is to think how can we go forward, and for this we need two things: creativity, and sorry, interpreter didn't understand. We're with the patriarchy. It talks about self-esteem. I understand your point, but we're gonna take there. I think these times are not the same. I don't think that we are the movements and the parties. We are not the results. We are not the passive receptors of their violence. Basically, we're not the victims of these reactionary movements. We have to think how to win, and to think it's basically how to reach beyond our limits. So I think this very fundamental of the times that we're in. There's a movement. This movement has a long history, and the biggest movement right now is the feminist movement. I think the feminist movement is the creative opportunity for our governments and popular movements that we have to prioritize women. And for this, I think that there's a lot of elements that are interesting, and some we have to pay attention to. And this is the pessimist part. I think we have to internal witness, and I'm thinking that is, okay, this is a metaphor, and I think it means that explains it. You know, like how Nike does this publicity, and shows a woman running, and they are waiting, great applause, and it's like, oh, thank you, because of this representation. And first, it's like, okay, well, I think sometimes institutional feminism makes the mistake and says, oh, we have a feminine minister in the university, applause, but not necessarily has that value, because it's in the service of the potency of a movement. What I'm referring to this, I think the feminism is making a lot of mistakes in a moment where it's not measuring the strength of the movement, and they're pushing for things that are okay, but they're not enough. It's not a very good concession of power. A great concession of power would mean that feminist, for example, leads the economy, for example. Not because the economy is better, it's more important than feminism, but because feminism is intersectional, and we have to have. It's hard to be a woman. It's hard to be a poor trans woman. It's harder to be a black poor trans woman. And this is not about individual, but it's about the patriarchal system that all these systems of oppression go hand in hand. And in real life, cannot imprint. We can put a feminist politics on all policy. And that's the real story. That's where we can transform life materially. And for me, that's a very, very first lesson. Not to kill those spaces, sino to think how we can rethink it and what the movement can really generate. And so, for me, that was something important to know. And I also think that there's a great opportunity, as I was saying before, because there's an agenda. If we are thinking, where are we going? If they have an agenda, then we should, as feminists, have our own agenda. Because we know that after the pandemic, the movements that the reality is not the same, and you are not measuring with the same parameters. And we take some lessons. One, for example, sorry, interpreter didn't understand. Feminism. For example, this thing that we call love is not unpaid labor. But there's, for example, community care. The people that take care, for example, because I say, here, sorry, interpreter didn't understand. And that community organizing is what saves people from hunger. It's the women from the barrios that create the kitchens and confront and put their bodies to the crisis that we're handling. And we need to create alternatives to develop that economic power that those type of works create. And another one is like nursing. But nursing, it's the health work more feminized. So it could be a great lesson to say, us as feminists, sorry, interpreter didn't understand. In an urgent way, we're worried about the problems of the people in general, or the women in particular. For example, in the trans population, 90% of trans women are outside of the market, of the labor market. If they don't have a formal work, they cannot pay for their own education. They have to go to informal works and spaces. But we consider it a priority to defend and to establish goals and policy for that population. But that's why we see a feminism that's falling short, because they don't see this as we need to create systems that are urgent and that create repair work. But I think we have to start somewhere. And there's a lot of negligence in general, the time of sharing. There's one in particular that's justice, and justice is not an act that's just in its nature. It's people. In general, they are accomplices of gender violence. And another thing, in Argentina, we just highlighted, but you can listen to it, and something that is very priority in our continent is legal abortion and accessible abortion. And I think it's very interesting. Please, yes, applaud. Yes, please. It's a very good fact is that in general, when this summit is trying to respond to that logic, but in general, we are accustomed to not to have to explain to the South how things are. In this case, there's a lot of feminist compass from this territory that they were able to see and observe Latin American processes, and right now they use the same green. the green hanky that we use in Latin America. That green hanky is they're the ones that confronted and condemned the dictator in Argentina, and that it was defended in, for example, and today the American feminist is very. Yes.
What's our agenda? What do you think? But sometimes paralysis in processes of transformation aren't just about a lack of ideas. And there's a thing I want to say here. Well, self-esteem is a way of saying pathological obsession or emotional problems or all kinds of other urgent issues. But I say self-esteem, I refer to self-esteem because in general, well, there's a really important struggle with our people there, and I'll repeat, there's really, really serious problems around the work, the economic market. There's incredibly high rates of the challenges around land and property rights, and these are also very important feminist struggles, even though they don't seem to be part of feminism. So the inequality that women face is even greater than the inequality that men face, although they all have economic challenges. So we all need, we're not going to get anything done in society without fighting a little bit. I'm of the people who prefer to fight for real rather than wondering about how I might fail in the future and stop myself from fighting. But we have to really give it our best. I talk about self-esteem so that we talk about trust in ourselves and trust in an alternative model of our countries, our continent, and our world. Self-esteem so that we can trust the coming generations that will be able to build a new century, a new continent, and a new world that we need. To close, I'm very, very grateful for this invitation. I'm so happy to get to know this space and to be here with these compañeras on this incredible panel and to meet so many amazing people and to be able to meet up with all of you in a horizontal way with a different kind of way of looking at the world, something very different than the hierarchy of that other summit over there. We're here to engage in energetic debate. And in these kinds of encounters, this is where we're able to develop a politics, a shared politics that's going to allow us to move forward and allow the rights that all of us deserve. I think this is our movement, this is our popular movement, and these are the spaces that we're building to be able to put our shoulders to the wheel and to work to move forward together. And I'm very, very grateful, and I can experience challenges with myself or challenges in whatever way, but I'm so grateful to be in spaces like this, and I hope that all of you don't leave without saying goodbye to me and continue in the fight.
Much to discuss and to unravel and to be inspired by. I want to now introduce Janiece Fountain. Janiece is a grassroots organizer in Birmingham, Alabama, and she's dedicated to reproductive justice, direct aid, and reparations for the Black community. Janiece, who is a mom herself, is the founder of Margins, Women Helping Black Women, which is a local community aid organization that addresses the financial and material needs of low-income Black mothers and their children. Janiece brings this extensive community knowledge to her role as a family justice organizer, assisting Yellowhammer Fund in providing additional support for those located in the Birmingham area. Welcome, Janiece.
Thank you. Hey, y'all. I just wanted to. No? Is it working? I don't think so. Oh, yes, it is. Okay. Sorry. I just wanted to start off by saying thanks to the People's Summit for having me here. It's been really nice to hear everyone's stances, everyone's work, stand and struggle with everyone and all the intersections. I'm really excited to represent Yellowhammer Fund as Family Justice Organizer because we're a reproductive justice agency or organization, and I really like to point to us being a reproductive justice organization rather than reproductive rights because the focus on legality is leaving my people behind. Legal doesn't account for my clients who are already deciding between food and rent. Legal doesn't account for my clients who are trying to get gas money to get to the 24-hour mandatory counseling session. Legality doesn't mean my clients have childcare to make it to their appointments. Legality isn't holding space for undocumented folks that need abortions also. We cannot only focus on legality while queer and trans folks are wholly left out of the conversation and unable to receive affirming care. Fannie Lou Hamer said, "Nobody is free until we're all free." In America, dismantling patriarchy means liberation for white women. We are no longer going to stand by and hope for any amount of equality via proximity. We're demanding equity now. While Black women, Black queer and trans folks organized with breadcrumbs to feed their communities and keep them alive, white women took to the streets and charaded the Handmaid's Tale. This post-Roe Alabama what if that Black and brown folks have already been long but living. Lack of reproductive agency has been our reality. An abortion ban will disproportionately impact Black and brown folks. The reality of post-Roe for a lot of non-POC folks is inconvenience. For my folks, this is a death threat. For a group of folks already living with medical discrimination, birthing inequity, in a society where Black women are already experiencing a maternal mortality rate that is 3 times that of white women, I don't want to sit at a table and pretend that we have the same stakes. I want you to get up. Stand up behind your Protect Black Women signs, stand up in real time, stand up in those rooms that Black women have been systematically kept out of. Stand up when Black women are being crushed under a capitalist white supremacist system that starves us and keeps us nomadic. Stand up when Black women choose to carry a pregnancy. Being pro-choice means or should mean that there are more options than abortion. Poverty stripping us of our agency is a white supremacist issue. Black women only get an abortion due to poverty, and a pregnancy that they would have otherwise kept is a white supremacist issue. Supporting abortion exclusively is a white supremacist stance. Reproductive justice looks like agency. Yellowhammer Fund knows this as they fund abortions and practical support around them. They uplift organizations like mine, Margins, that are closing the access gap, and also supporting folks' right to parent. The time to support reproductive justice organizations has long been here. Don't look to larger names that are already getting all of the funding. Look to Yellowhammer Fund. Look to Margins, who is establishing 24-hour food pantries. Support us as we mobilize resources in the Deep South directly against what we are believed to deserve. Black women are targets of stigmatized services. Margins believes folks to know what they need. We need money and we need resource. We need services that don't strip us of our agency. We became what we needed. It's up to you to support the work.
Thank you so much, Janiece, for your words, and I'm going to pass it to Cindy Wiesner. Cindy is a 30-year veteran of the social justice movement in the U.S. and internationally. She is the executive director of the Grassroots Global Justice Alliance and the Grassroots Global Justice Action Fund. Welcome, Cindy.
Yay.
Thank you. Buenos dias. Good morning. I also live in the South, so when we say good morning, good morning. Buenos dias. All right. Who here wants to end patriarchy? Yes, right? Who here wants to end racial capitalism? Who here wants to end imperialism? All right. I think we're in the right room, right? We're at the right summit, right? Okay. So I want to first acknowledge the original stewards of this land, the Tonga people. I want to also appreciate the organizers of the People's Summit for Democracy, because you're creating a space, we are creating a space of dialogue, of exchange, where dissidents are going to come together. We're coming together to debate, to dialogue, to dream, to have our differences, but also to co-conspire. And I want to thank my fellow panelists, super inspiring, right? Let's give it up for these panelists, right? And I want to also do a greeting to the folks that are watching us. Let's give it up. Let's shout out from this big audience to everyone watching on the live stream. So, right. Woo! Because we also feel your presence here, specifically our international comrades that couldn't be here because of the denial of the US government not allowing them to be here, right? So you're here in presence and in spirit, and we're here in solidarity. And I also want to be able to do a special recognition. I'm here with the Grassroots Global Justice Delegation, so shout out to my GGJ folks who are also here. And a special greeting, a saludo to mi gente, especially todas las maricas, las marimachas, las tortilleras, las jotas, las zapatonas, las buchas, las studs, femmes, two-spirit, bi, and pansexual, asexual, transgender, and gender justice expansive warriors. All of us, right, that are here.
Thank you.
We're here, and we've always been here, and we will continue to be here and exist. So I just want to shout it out, because every day is Pride for us. Every day is queer liberation. It's not just about this month. And we want to reclaim also our historical figures, known and unknown, because there's millions of people that have made change for us to step into this moment, for us to continue that change. And I want to name Sylvia, Marcia, Stormy, Audrey, Pat, Gloria, right? And if you don't know who those names are, you got some education to do. But you can also ask us, right? Because that's the thing that we stand on shoulders, right? On many people's shoulders that have created the pathway for us. So, because people didn't riot, like the compañera said, right? We didn't riot. We didn't take the streets just to assimilate. And we just don't want equality. We want a different world. Right? We want a different world. We want a deal. They threw that first brick because they wanted to go to the root causes of poverty, right? They wanted to break the gender binary. They wanted people to live with dignity and free and control of the bourgeois and militarized state. They wanted to be able to live, love, and fuck whoever they wanted to, right? And we want full liberation, right? Because that's what we're here for, full liberation. So, in humbly carrying the tradition of those thousands and conscious organizers and people are in this country, in this territory, but across the world, we need to, like folks are saying, radically imagine what is possible, dare to hope, but be able to be in the process of building those emancipatory paradigms and projects, right? That is the task of our generation. That is the task to create those new economies, that new culture, the new political system where we can be our full selves and we can be in full community with self-confidence, with those rights that all of us so ardently fight for, right? So I want to share with you today a little bit of some of the alternatives that we've been building at Grassroots Global Justice Alliance, right? And we don't do this alone. We do this on the history of organizations and movements and leaders that have been building the work for generations. And we do this also with our social movement colleagues and comrades, not only here on Turtle Island, but across the world. And we are demanding and creating a new political project. which is a feminist, anti-racist, regenerative economy. All right? Are you down with that? Are you down with that, right? It's an alternative to this current system of death, control, and domination, right? It is an alternative. And we must not continue to say not only what we're fighting against, we have to be able to talk about what we're fighting for and put it squarely on the table, right? Because this is the moment where, you know, I can go down and scare you with the statistics, right, around climate change, right? The continent of Africa, the small nation island states, indigenous people, environmental justice organizers, scientists have been saying we live in a finite planet, right? We need to be able to think about ways in which this climate crisis, because of overconsumption, because of the global north in particular, the US, because of deregulation, complete free reign of transnational corporations, the same corporations that are sitting at the table at the LA Convention Center, right? The people who got us into this fucking mess are then negotiating our future, right? And so we are here that we need to be clear about what system that we're trying to fight, right? This is a racialized and gendered capitalist imperialist colonial system, right? And we know that we must dismantle it, but we need to be able to dismantle it with an alternative, right? The alternative that puts care, that puts our bodies, that puts right relationship with nature, that puts values, our feminist values, our anti-racist values, our pro-gay, our pro-migrant, our pro-environment values at the front, right? So are you with me? Yeah? Yeah? Okay. Because we gotta say no. We gotta say no to greenwashing, right? We gotta say no to pinkwashing. We gotta say no to violent tinting, right? What that means is that neoliberalism is really smart. All those people over there, they look like us. They look like us, right? They're even talking about building a sustainable, equitable future. But we gotta call the bullshit. We gotta be able to go through that and say that is a neoliberal agenda that is based on profit, not only of our labor, our land, but of our bodies, right? And we need to be able to say it very clearly because neoliberalism will put women, indigenous people, queer people there and basically say the words that say our green future, but we need to be clear about what that means. They'll say equality for LGBT rights and have pride all over and we need to be clear about that. And I think it's important for us to be able to talk about what kind of work that frontline communities, that feminists, that indigenous people, that black folks have been doing, right? Because we know we need a new economic system. We need a new paradigm where, for example, energy is decentralized, where we're in right relationship with nature, where people, not corporation, have the protection of the commons, where we have durable housing, food sovereignty, energy democracy, where our communities are safe, where people are valued, where we are well, where care is fundamental, and we have reorganized social relationships. And that part of that is challenging these systems of oppression, not only in society, but also within our communities, and also within our families, within our institutions, and within our movements. And so you think that might sound like, you know, this is too much, can that happen here? But we have no choice, right? We have no choice. And I think why the People's Summit and why these conversations are so significant, because we need bold ideas. We need new demands. We need systemic change alternatives because we and the planet need it. There is a moment here where we're having an ideological battle. There is an ideological battle that is white supremacist, that is patriarchal, that is authoritarian. Just because we got Trump out of office doesn't mean that there isn't a mass popular right-wing movement that is coming to us, that is organizing itself. We know it's arming itself, but we also know that they're taking state power. And so we have to be clear that all tactics at this moment are necessary to fight against that ideological difference that we have. They have a very different mindset, right? Where they see queer people, black people, indigenous people, migrant people, feminists, all of us as enemies, right? And we need to be clear that we're not scared of them, right? But we need to organize, and we need to be able to organize ourselves, right? And with a revolutionary vision. And we need to be able to build grassroots, mass-based, militant organizations. We need to make alliances in the way we've never been able to make. We need to, with integrity and with boldness, we need to build united fronts. We need to honor that people speak for themselves. We need to build international transformative solidarity. We need to be unapologetically left. We need to be radical grassroots feminists. We need to challenge the gender binary. We need to challenge anti-blackness. We need to care about climate, defend migrant rights. We need to defend our historical memory. We need to say no to war, to Zionism, to occupation, from the borders to our prisons. And we need to know that we also are clear about what we want. And we need to say it. We need to say it boldly, because people not need those ideas, they need that hope, but we also need to make it material and real. And so that, for us, is part of building. We say no war, no warming, build an economy for the people and the planet. And I want to invite you all to be part of that movement and that process for us to imagine that new world, because if it's on us, y'all, and it's on the millions of people that are organizing all around this world, and I think we can win. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cindy. Thank you, Cindy, and thank you, everybody, for this amazing spirit of this conversation. I'm loving the inspiration that's coming from everybody's comments, and I hope that we are going to continue talking about all of these things here and also when we go off into our other activities as well. And I'm really excited to introduce our next speaker, Liane Antonio Sanchez. She is a trans Mexican and indigenous woman and a defender of human rights. She has experienced a variety of social injustices like discrimination, inequality, gender-based violence, and labor exploitation in both the US and Mexico. And after being in solitary confinement and ICE detention, she became a fighter for her community against many forms of oppression. Her work and her advocacy is featured in the New York Times, in the CNN, and in Telemundo, and she is the director of Community Estrella in Georgia. Thank you so much for being with us, and welcome.
Hello to everyone. Que viva Mexico! Viva trans women! First, well, just to break the mold, I'm going to stand up before anything else. I'm a trans, indigenous, migrant, Chinanteca woman, and I'm going to begin speaking my indigenous language. My people is being eliminated. The majority of our indigenous pueblos, our indigenous peoples are being eliminated. My hands and my feet may be tied, but the brilliance of my mind and my heart and my soul and my spirit can never be tied. These are my weapons to continue in resistance. Putting an end to the patriarchy. Do we really want to put an end to the patriarchy? I only heard 3 voices saying yes. Putting an end to the patriarchy is moving forward in defense of all those intersections and not colonizing ideas that have invaded our bodies and have been imposed on our bodies, our minds, our hearts, our souls, and our spirits. I come from a place with deep history, and I do the work that I do because as leaders, as activists, we have heard these stories before. And really, we have paid attention. Have we really paid attention? Have we really paid attention to the stories of trans people? You can't even hear them. We don't hear them. Why are there no stories? Because we are invisibilized. Because feminism only thinks that it is a struggle of a woman who can procreate or who has a vagina. And that is what the colonizers, what the empire, what the system has taught us. But really, here I am as a feminist woman. I arrived to this country seeking refuge, safety, and protection from Mexico. Because in my country of origin, I did not have that support. And I migrated. I crossed the desert. And when I arrived in this country, I found barriers. The first barrier that the system imposes is language, English. Then I encountered the fact that I couldn't work because I didn't have papers. I couldn't move around because I was a trans person. I couldn't be included. We couldn't even be included in feminist spaces. When I began working on these issues, I approached educational institutions, academic institutions, saying, I need support, I need to be included. And I received rejection from many organizations, from many projects, and from many institutions, saying that I am not like them, like those women. But have you ever thought that we're the same color? We're made from the same earth. We are made with the same intelligence. It is unacceptable that our compañeras, our companions, and do not include trans companions at the conversation table. It is unacceptable. Feminism has taught us through these white women in power that they're only able to think about a vagina or about being stereotypes of what women are. A perfect woman. A perfect who has 90, 60, 90 in measurements, in centimeters, in metric. But how many of us love tacos? We don't all have those measurements. We love our tacos, right? I was criminalized by the U.S. government because of all of the intersections that are in me. Being inside there, immigration put me into solitary confinement for 1 year. The famous hole. Only and exclusively because I am a trans woman. Thanks to the universe, thanks to my ancestors, I am still alive. I was able to withstand all of that humiliation. I know firsthand the unhealthy conditions and inhuman conditions that people experience in immigration jails. And currently, this happens in many immigration jails. How many of us here are advocating for migrant justice? How many of us here? How many people here do we have who, instead of investing in cages and in prisons, invest in communities, in the solidarity economy, and in popular education and popular communication, in all of those things? That belong to the people that are from neighborhoods, from peoples, from the rancho, and that we have forgotten about. Because this capitalist country has invaded inside of us. Let's not forget where we came from. Let's not forget who we are. Because if we don't do this together, they're going to kill us apart. They'll kill us because we're separated. United States is the third most violent country in terms of violence against trans people, following Brazil, Mexico, and the United States. Last year, more than 40 people died, or actually more than 40 people were murdered solely and exclusively for being who they are. Among them, a very important activist, Soraya, who, to protect a person, to embrace and welcome a person in her home, in the place where she was living. The man chased after that woman, and because the woman was taking refuge in her house, he killed her. There are many examples that we've heard of across the world. I also am afraid. I'm talking now, I'm speaking now, but tomorrow, I don't know who might come to kill me. We're here together. We're here with you. Thank you. I'm also a woman. I am a fag. I am am gay. Call me whatever you want to call me, but speak to me with respect. But above all, I am also a woman. With or without a vagina, I am a woman because my gender identity is not defined by my genitals. So, my genitals, to hell with my genitals. Do you really want to put an end to the patriarchy? What do we have to do? End discrimination. Thank you. Thank you. All together, all of us together are women. Women are moving forward. Women. We don't only have the capacity to procreate. We don't only have the capacity to be home carers of the home, and to be domestic workers. Women also are also sluts. It's true. We need to support sex work. I'm not a slut, I'm a businesswoman. That's what it's about. We should. Sex work is also a right. Many trans migrant people who come to this country, the first work, the first job, or the first path that we find is sex work. That's the only one that society allows us to. Yes, society imposes that on us. Why? Because we don't have, we're not fit for the labor movement. So there are universities, there is the academy, sure, but they don't include trans people in those universities and those academies. And many migrant trans people ask for work papers or for other kinds of visas to be able to participate in those institutions, in those academic institutions. And in order to get those papers, of course, years, we have to fight our cases for years. In Georgia, just in the state of Georgia, 99.9% of the cases of asylum cases are on hold. Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, and many, many states in the Deep South are known as the states where there's an imposition of laws, of anti-immigrant laws, of racist laws that later, on a national level, those laws are born in the South and then are enacted nationally. Those ideas are implanted in the South. Our representatives, the ones who say they're serving us, excuse me, some of our representatives, all they want is our vote. It is time that we demand an accountability. And that is what we can do. And we need to bring accountability to our conversations as well. I, as a woman, as a trans woman, a trans migrant woman, I invite you that instead of judging, let's start by asking how we can help one another. Because as good human beings, the first thing we can do is support the person next to us, support our neighbor, even if we make mistakes. The only thing, what we say, is you deserve it because you're bad, because you're a bad person. But if you've really thought, if you've really sat down to talk to someone, what is it that that person needs? What made someone be a slut? What made someone be homeless? What made someone lose their family or become a murderer? The capitalist imperial system that puts these ideas into our heads. If we really exist to end the patriarchy, we need to abolish all of those ideas, and we need solidarity, true solidarity, and not just lip service. Body, heart, spirit, they don't deserve to be privatized or to be imposed upon by this society. Those people who are at that summit over there, they're all believing they're creating laws, supposedly creating protective laws. In the United States, it doesn't have those protective laws. When they receive migrant people in their jails, in unhealthy, inhuman conditions, even where the system itself, the immigration system itself, has murdered migrants only because they are seeking refuge, safety, and protection. And you might feel like you're a bad immigrant, but you don't know why you're a bad immigrant. But am I just a bad immigrant because I crossed the border and I didn't come with papers? With a permission? A bad immigrant? But doesn't know that it's thanks to the United States that migrant had the bravery to leave their country and seek refuge in another country. And in contrast, this country doesn't know how to offer refuge. The United States does not have human rights that protect trans people. This month is Pride Month. And if there's no pride, if there's detention still, we should not feel pride. All these companies, these agencies, even Uber says, Happy Pride Month. And? Fine. Okay, so maybe I'll get a 10% discount for Pride. But it's just so they'll continue to privatize even more. The banks, Chase, Wells Fargo, all those banks. Yeah, we're for Pride. Mm-hmm. Are you for Pride? But have you donated to foundations where supposedly they work for the LGBTQ community? All these companies need to work toward a just economy. And we, those of us who are here, we are going to be responsible for making them do it. That's what we need to do, compañeros. That is our task today, and that is everyone's task. Women and men in solidarity. To end, I want to ask you for a few moments of silence for those women who are victims of violence, victims of empire, victims of capitalism, who have been brutally murdered across the Americas and across the world, including trans people. And then we're going to give a very strong applause for them.
Gracias.
Qué lindo. Me para los pelos.
Trans. Muchas gracias por tu contribución, la expresión y la visión. Para presentar gracias a la última persona, Karina es una organizadora chicana.
University, she led struggles for immigrant rights and financial aid reform and against the Iraq War. She later taught high school math, co-founded the Justice Center in El Barrio in New York City, and worked for many years as the education director of the National Latina Institute for Reproductive Justice, training working-class Latina activists principally in Florida, Texas, Virginia, and New York. Welcome, Karina.
Thank you. Thank you. Wow. Is this thing on? Can you hear me? Wow. ¿Cómo se sienten? Oh my God. ¿Vamos a poner fin al patriarcado? Por supuesto que sí. My God, I just feel so energized. I want to just take a moment to remember this moment. Everybody who's here, to look around you. This is what it feels like to fight together, to not be alone, to be organized. This is what we need more of. And this is what we're going to do. Yeah. I have to say I'm so nervous and happy and excited. I came here from New York, but I'm originally from Long Beach. So this is my, yeah. Coming over here, even just on the drive, is just like all like nostalgia. And my grandmother is here, and my tia Marta, my tia Chris, and my prima Monet. And you know, I just remember, there's a saying in Spanish, como uña y mugre. It's like the dirt underneath the fingernail. I was the dirt underneath my grandmother's fingernail. I was attached to her by the hip. And so I just remember being here and coming. My grandmother and I, we would get on the Metrolink. We would get a ride to the Metrolink, and then from the Metrolink, we would come down here, take a bus, take another bus, and then go to USC Medical Center and go to Harbor Hospital. My grandmother is a survivor of domestic violence. She's an immigrant woman. She's a single mother. She was a fast food worker. And here in Long Beach, she had an accident. And after that accident, she had a disability, and she had to, get services. And I was with my grandmother when she did that. And I remember those feelings. And I remember I'm so proud of her, the pride of like going through things and still not giving up, even though everything is stacked up against you, not giving up. And when I learned and I started getting more involved in politics, then I got pissed. Then it started to piss me off because I realized that all of those hardships were unnecessary. All of that humiliation that you get, you work here, right? They depend on you, but the minute that something happens to you, then you're garbage. Then they throw you aside, right? I remember coming with her to these appointments, and I know part of my family is undocumented, so then we know what that means, right? That means that you go to the emergency room, you wait 6 hours, and you just try to write it out, right? It means you take Tylenol, it means you do whatever you try to do to not end up at the emergency room, and that's your health care. And all of us in this room have stories like that, right? The thing that I learned is that it's not just our individual story, that it's millions of people who are living like that, unnecessarily suffering. Why? Capitalism. That's the only reason why our communities are suffering, and that's enough is enough. And that's why I became a socialist. And that's why I'm a proud socialist. Because I agree with all of my comrades here that another world is possible, and that the people who are holding us back and wasting our time, their time is up. Their time is up. So it's not that I don't value overcoming obstacles. It's just that I want to overcome new obstacles. I want my daughter to overcome new obstacles, not the obstacles that my grandmother and I had to overcome. I'm done with those. Let's move on to new things, because we can. We have the resources for that. We can live better, and so we just need to get organized. I've spent a lot of time organizing in Texas, and that's where I got a lot of my optimism about the necessity, not just the necessity, but the possibility, right? The possibility, because of the comrade that was mentioning, Ophelia, how so many women are the backbone, are provide for our communities and build community, even when they don't have shit, even when they don't have anything, they still do it. So I want to share some stories of some of the things that I've seen and that I've heard, just to give a description about the area of Texas that I'm talking about. I'm talking about South Texas, the Rio Grande Valley. It's the southernmost part of Texas. It's very rural. It's very poor. I'm talking about, and it's in the United States, but I'm talking about tin roofs. I'm talking about dirt roads. I'm talking about communities that don't have electricity. In this country, the richest country in the world, those are called the colonias, which in Spanish just means neighborhood. So, as we all know, healthcare and reproductive healthcare in particular is such an enormous source of hardship for so many of our people. So many people have some outrageous story of being denied healthcare, of having to go through the constant runaround, of being denied coverage, of needlessly suffering from the poverty, the hospital bills, and not being able to, at the end of the day, access basic medical services that they need to save their lives. These stories are often hidden. They're not talked about. And so they're understood as an individual problem, right? Just somebody's bad luck or somebody's misfortune or something that they did. And the reality is that this is the problem of capitalism. That's the only reason why we are suffering like this. Even in the reproductive rights world, as another comrade already mentioned too, the real stories of working class women are often left out or don't receive the focus that they deserve. And this may lead people to wrongly believe that reproductive justice is just a middle-class white woman's issue. But nothing could be further from the truth. Every issue is a woman's issue, is a working class issue, because everything affects all of us, right? And it's not just women, right? I met one woman, a mother, who actually swam across the river to Mexico for a medical procedure and then swam back fresh with stitches. Why do you think she did this? Why didn't she go to a hospital in Texas? Is it because there's no doctors here? Is it because there's no hospitals or they don't have the technology for this basic procedure? No, of course not, right? It was because she didn't have health insurance. because she couldn't afford it with the wages that she was earning. It was because she was undocumented and she didn't qualify for any programs. So her only option was to take this tremendous risk of going back to Mexico, her children in the United States, and praying that she could get back and that she wouldn't have any major infection. I've met many women living with HPV, human papillomavirus, who run a high risk of developing cervical cancer because of this disease. As some of you may know, this disease is actually treatable. It's completely preventable if treated with care. But what has to happen is that you have to have regular checkups and you have to go to the doctor. But in this country, Latinas are dying from this disease because they don't have access to preventative care. And this is why the incidence of cervical cancer for Latinas is twice as high as it is for white women. We'd organized with lots of women who knew that they had HPV. They knew that they had to have regular checkups to monitor it, but they hadn't been to the doctor in the last year and a half because they couldn't afford to pay the $100 or the $250 for the exam. In the richest country in the world. This is the cruelty of capitalism. Are people suffering for no reason? So that brings me to the critical issue of the abortion struggle. In the same state of Texas, now politicians are saying that they are the ones that are trying to protect life. ¿Les crees? Texas, where people froze to death last year because of climate change, because of greedy for-profit electrical companies, and the total failure of the government to provide people with even the most basic minimal protections against these corporations. Texas, one of the worst states, if not the worst state to live in terms of having funding for schools and children, for access, for healthcare, for people. Texas, one of the worst rates of hunger and poverty for children. That is the state that is supposedly protecting the unborn, leading the attacks on healthcare access and abortion rights in the country. It's almost as ridiculous as a country that's trained and sponsored death squads in neighboring countries, overthrowing democratically elected, left, popular, socialist governments, and installing military dictatorships, and then pronouncing itself the leader of the free world, and then holding a summit of the Americas without the Americas. It's almost as ridiculous as that. But these ridiculous, bald-faced lies happen daily in this country. They happen daily. What did the former Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, say when he was so fondly and nostalgically remembering his time as the CIA director? He said, quote, "We lied, we cheated, we stole, we had entire training courses on it." That's the former Secretary of State talking about his time as the director of the CIA. No tienen vergüenza. They have no shame. But turn on the TV, and then you see them, they know when to fix their face and get back to their talking points, don't they? Then they call themselves pro-life and pro-freedom and pro-democracy. But I don't want to waste another second of our time talking about what we all know to be true, which is that none of this has to do with life or health or protecting or freedom or democracy. It has nothing to do with that, any of that. We're in the middle of a public health crisis. We're in the middle of a climate crisis, an economic crisis, an educational crisis. And all these politicians can do is fan the flames and start a new war and try to prepare us, if you can believe it, psychologically, for a nuclear war. They actually think that they can win a nuclear war. That's all they can do. And here at home, in usual US fashion, instead of passing any meaningful legislation to support the millions of working class people who are struggling in this country right now, all they can do is start new wars. It's unbelievable. Because you know, our problem in this country is not that we have too much health care, right? That's not the problem, and yet that's what they're focusing on. Instead of offering any real or material solutions, the US ruling class goes back to the same old playbook. That is to divide, to distract, to try to disorganize, and attempt to paralyze one segment of the population by intensifying an attack on another segment of the population, right? This is what the conservatives in this country have particularly mastered. The overthrow of Roe v. Wade, or its severe limitation, which would take away the right to abortion in dozens of states almost immediately, which would represent, of course, a huge setback for millions of working class families in particular, who can't really travel to other states and where it will remain legal. Half the country it would be illegal, half the country would be legal. So we have to understand how this came about and how we're going to fight back and win. This is the culmination of a 50-year strategy on the part of conservatives who pushed back against the gains of the 1960s and the 1970s, of the social movements, of women's movement, Black liberation movement, LGBTQ movement. They built a new right-wing trend by fusing together religious conservatism with financial conservatism. They delivered a mass base from the churches to Wall Street. To pursue their policies of what ultimately is deregulation, a tax on unions, lower taxes, deindustrialization, so on and so forth. As long as the ultra-rich owners also gave them some of the laws that they were demanding. This is the unholy matrimony of Wall Street and these evangelical mega churches. And they built new foundations, too, and institutions that represented this right-wing marriage. And Kavanaugh and Neil Gorsuch and Alito and these right-wing justices, they represent the children of this marriage. They've been preparing for this moment for decades. Many of us in the streets in these last months, since the draft of the Supreme Court memo was leaked, came out into the streets, and it was so amazing. It was so amazing to see tens of thousands of people hitting the streets right away, including some areas that hadn't seen mass protests. Even in the red states. This wasn't because of any one group either. It was because the people saw the urgency of the moment, and they were brought into the streets. I think many of those protesting would join us, and have joined us, and will join us, and really fight back against these lies that the right wing pretends to care about. But if we stop our analysis there, that would be insufficient. Because while we have to understand what the Republicans have done, we have to understand what the Democratic Party has done. Or hasn't done. Right now, they are telling us that the answer to the potential overthrow of Roe would be to just vote in November. This, as we all know, is a failed strategy. If you are a military general with a record of losing wars, with losing strategies, you would not have any legs to stand on to tell people to follow you once again with the same strategy, would you? No. But that is exactly what they're doing. They had many chances to codify Roe v. Wade into law and make abortion a federal right. They had a Democratic majority in the House and Senate under the Carter administration, under the Clinton administration, under the Obama administration, and under the Biden administration. They've promised repeatedly and never delivered. The same that they've done to the immigrant rights movement, the same thing that they're doing to the women's movement. They've used abortion as an issue to gain voters, but when they get into office, they never make it a priority. The problem is that many women's organizations have adopted the logic of this strategy to such an extent that they've downplayed or disregarded the importance of mass mobilization. They have put all their eggs in the basket of keeping friends in high places. But you see, that's what we can't keep relying on. They wanted to rely on having a seat at the table, is how I've heard many people describe it. But you become captive to that. You can no longer call out the system in the same way. You can no longer call out capitalism in the same way. You stick to your lane, your talking points, your friends. You don't want to risk bringing in other issues that could turn off your so-called friends or your donors or the people who gave you access. You definitely can't talk about imperialism or war or Cuba or Venezuela or the US spending tens of billions of dollars on weapons in the Ukraine while people are struggling here. And that's how the NGOization of our movements really works at its core. It strips away our radical analysis, our internationalism, and it keeps us disconnected from an independent political project. This is a losing strategy. I'm not talking about tactical agreements and necessities here and there with some Democratic representative to pass some laws. But the core of our strategy has to be grounded in mass mobilizations, in grassroots organizing. And we in the PSL believe in a socialist perspective because that's what can speak to all of the issues. That can speak to the women in the Rio Grande Valley, that can speak to the women in East Los Angeles, in Long Beach, all over the country and all over the world. We don't need 100 movements and organizations, each approaching the working class on a different form of oppression. We need a movement that speaks to all of them, that empowers those women to fight on all the issues and to seek allies around the country and around the world from every section of our people and our class. And the point of a revolutionary socialist party is to do just that. We are facing a tough time with abortion rights, but we want to learn from our sisters and our comrades in places like Argentina and Mexico, who were facing a harder time, the complete criminalization of abortion, in fact, for decades. And then they built a movement based on popular feminism, working class feminism. And now these same Catholic countries that used to be behind the United States in women's rights are now going to be ahead of the United States in many respects. We have to learn those lessons rather than just sitting back and feeling like all is lost. Today, it's the possible overthrow of Roe v. Wade, making safe abortion illegal in this country, an act that would threaten the lives of half the population and then some. And tomorrow, it's back to the attacks on trans youth and immigrants, unionists, and back and forth a constant war against what they hope will remain as isolated, single-issue strategies. What they don't want is for all of these isolated, single-issue struggles to unite practically and ideologically and form this power. They want us to be isolated, alone, and distracted. We need to be connected, part of an organization, and sharp. They want us to feel small and powerless, without options, but we need to be big and confident and with a vision. They want us to give up. They want us to prepare for the end of the world, throw up our hands and say that it's over. But we need to say no. It's not over, and we'll take it from here. But Manolo was right the other day. He said, we have to make a choice. It's capitalism or it's us. It's capitalism or it's us. So we have to make a choice. What are we going to do? It's us. Are we going to fight? Yeah. Are we going to win? Yeah. Del norte al sur, del este a oeste, ganaremos esta lucha, cueste lo que cueste. Del norte al sur, del este a oeste, ganaremos esta lucha.
Cueste lo que cueste.
Ganaremos esta lucha.
Cueste lo que cueste.
Thank you, Karina. And thank you to all of our presenters, all of these women who have shared with us incredible visions, and not only visions, but concrete steps that we can take to actually ending patriarchy and building a new system that works for everybody. There's so much more to say and so much. We've only just begun the conversation, but we have to close this part of the conversation, and I want to propose that we continue talking. There are so many people in this room who haven't been on this stage, who have also visions, who have wisdoms to share, and we're all together in the same place. So let's take advantage of it, and let's continue the conversation in all of the spaces of the summit. And let's all go on Friday to the march, bring this spirit that we've had this morning, and let's show Biden what we really think of the solutions that the White House and the United States is giving to the women of the Americas. So I hope you can all join us on Friday at 5 p.m. Let's give a big thank you, a final cheer to all of the women who presented today. Thank you all so much for coming.
Thank you. Can I end with a chant?
Yes, please.
All right. So part of the World March of Women, we're part of the Marcha Mundial de las Mujeres, and part of the struggle that we have to be clear, right, is no one's free. We got to free everybody, and we got to also free the planet. So one thing in Spanish, I'm going to say it in Spanish, seguiremos en marcha hasta que todas y todos seamos libres, right? Seguiremos en marcha.
Hasta que todas y todos seamos libres.
Seguiremos en marcha.
Hasta que todas y todos seamos libres.
We will keep marching until we are all free. We will keep marching.
Until we're free.
We will keep marching.
We'll keep free.
We will keep marching.
Until we are all free.
Thank you.
Please, we're going to have a few words from our dear friend Manolo before we transition to the next panel on climate justice and food sovereignty. So I'm going to pass it over to Manolo.
Todos los días me levanto bien temprano a jornanear.
¡Arriba nuestras compañeras! ¡Abajo el patriarcado! Comrades, before we step out, I wanted to share some important updates on the development of this People's Summit. We told you yesterday that Biden's summit was a failure. But we didn't know how big of a failure it was going to be. They've completely lost it yesterday. An empty summit of the Americas. Yesterday, we started here with 800 people. They had to face a room of 30 people. It's not just about the numbers, though. It's about the spirit. It's about the politics. It's about the people. That's what counts. We have come together from all over Latin America, from across North America, and we have done the impossible to the point that even the State Department had to send people over to the People's Summit. We have to continue, though. Tomorrow, we have a permit to march. They gave us a piece of paper that says we can march, but that's not the permit I'm talking about. We have a bigger permit to march. Our ancestors gave us that permit. Harriet Tubman gave us that permit. Atue gave us that permit. We don't need permission from anybody. We are going to march tomorrow on Biden and all the corrupt politicians who are accompanying him in that silly summit of the Americas. But we need your help. Where are those buckets? This is like Sunday morning now. I am not a preacher, but I like to ask for money. Because we are not being funded by the criminals who loot our people every day. We fund ourselves. We need your help. If you have $1, if you have $5, if you have more than that, you can give so that we can have a loud-ass sound system facing Biden tomorrow. Help us get there. And if you don't have cash, there's PayPal, there's Venmo, there's Cash App. You can even hug us as a donation. But don't forget to give something. Because this is not for me. This is not for you alone. This is for all of us. This is para todos nosotros y nosotras. I'd like to now welcome the comrades for the next panel so we can get started.